I think it's been an amazing day, and I'm very surprised that you're all still awake somewhat. You've been sitting here for, I think, 6 hours now, and we're still 2 hours left. So I want to give you a 10-second break by just rising yourself. Come up, stand up your chairs. I think you've been sitting down for 4 hours now, something like that. And just do a bit of stretch, right? I mean, congratulations, and thank yourself, because it's been amazing achievement for you, and congratulations so far. Okay, you can relax again. Just take in the developer position, relax and sleep again. So I'm the third speaker talking about databases. So I don't know how many of you who think that databases are the most fun thing and very easy to work with. Let me see. Exactly. That's what I thought. Okay, so how many actually use databases today? Some kind, SQLite, or data. Yeah. Okay, so we all have to deal with it anyway. Now, how many would like that to be a little easier? Okay. I've seen actually one guy here today saying coordination is great, and that's nice. I've heard a lot of others saying that it's not as great. I'm here to talk a little about Realm, and I don't know how many have actually heard about Realm. Oh, actually a few. That's quite good. Anyway, for those who haven't, that's why I'm here. So I'll talk a bit about what is Realm, why could it be a good idea to use it, some of the design goals we had and how we fulfilled those. I'll show a little example of some code, and then a few lessons learned that we did or got while building it. It's very different to build a library with an API than building an app. So if any of you tried that, you'll know that. Okay, so what is Realm? Basically, it's a modern mobile database. It's an embedded database. It's a replacement for any other database locally on device. It's very easy to use. It's object-oriented, so it has the same niceties and API as an ORM has, but it's not an ORM. It has all the good benefits of that, but not the downsides. An ORM, in our opinion, is basically a band-aid that has been put on top of something bleeding to try and fix that. We try to start from the bottom up instead. So it's safe, it's reliable, it has all the good properties of a normal database, full ACID supported properties with the fully serializable, as any of you who are into the database lingo. Now it's built on a C++ core that has been developed from the ground up over the last 3 years in a basement, basically. It takes a while to build a solid database, so that's what we've been doing. It's very small, the data gets compressed, you can have more data on your device, and then we change the paradigm of how to work with data in general. The overall vision is a little higher than just this. This is basically to replace your data structures and this complete mismatch between your data structure and your database. It's basically to make one data structure that feels completely natural in your programming language, but just has the nice properties of a database that can scale and that is fast to search in and can persist, and also be shared among threads very easily. So, in comparison, or the opposite to what other databases ORMs does, is that your objects and your database is now one and the same thing. It's not having a copy of an object and the database, and then you sort of try to sync those. No, the database and the object is the same thing. It's your data structure, basically. And then it's also fast, and that's also a good thing sometimes. The other thing is that it's free, it's open source, so you can help develop this, and we don't earn a buck on it, so I'm not here to sell you anything, actually. Now, we launched Realm for iOS, about 3 months ago or so, and I think more than 20,000 developers worldwide already used it after the first 2 months. That's about 10 times as much as was the case with Parse when they launched. And we can already see now that there's about 1,000 apps or so. Well, this is actually some old figures, but about 1,000 apps already in production. And it's really difficult when you make a library to figure out, okay, so who's using it, how popular is it? We don't require you to register anything when you try and use it or download it. But we can see the downloads. We can see also how many people are actually giving us a star on GitHub to remember this library. And that's pretty many stars actually. So we also launched Round for Android here what is it, 3 weeks ago I think now. And already we can see now that we're top trending on GitHub. Only Google has the ability to outpass us this month, at least for Java. So we're quite happy about that. That's my avatar. Now, why on earth go about and do a new database? It's really insane because it is actually quite difficult to do. But when you look at things, how has databases developed over the years? We've seen the last 10 years, a lot of development has happened on the server side. Right? You have the next, I don't know, maybe 40 new NoSQL databases popping up here and there because of good reasons. Meanwhile, what has happened on mobile? Exactly, nothing. So we're trying to change that actually. Now I already told you a few reasons to probably use Round, but what is more interesting to us is, and probably to you, is to ask the developers using it. Well, yeah, okay, so this is a little before getting good core data skills. This is actually my son in a roller coaster. He was pretty scared the first time. I think he got actually happy afterwards and went to the roller coaster 4 times again. But it is pretty scary sometimes, and this is what people tell us when they use core data, at least most of them. This is how they look in their face. So, no, but seriously, so some of the feedback we've gotten here is that, this is a database they always wanted to build. Got another one here, so simple, so impressed. This is how it's supposed to be, simple, elegant. Wow, no more missing with core data. And my favorite is actually this guy, Osam. He says, switching from core data to Realm in one GIF. He likes animated GIFs, this guy. This is probably core data, I think. This is how he felt when he moved to Realm. Yeah, I like that. That's better than pure marketing, I think. No, so okay, let's see a little about. This is a guy who made Cloth. I don't know if you know that app. That's not that many females here, but this is a good app actually. You can keep track of your clothes. It's quite popular in the US. He uses Round for everything, and what we were quite surprised about was that we thought people might try this new database for new apps, but what we saw is that people actually take and rip out the existing data frameworks, core data. He ripped it out of a 2-year-old code base. Yeah, apps do live that long, some at least, and replaced it with Round in just a day. And he was quite happy with that. He saved thousands of lines of painful code as he wrote. So nice. Here's another one, making a full point of sales application, also just replaced with core data. Some of the benefits I mentioned is that, and actually that's one of the bigger surprises. We thought that people would be thrilled with speed. Now we can make it a lot faster, and you can have more objects in your database, and that's cool. But what we have seen is that people appreciate more all the hours they save in dealing with database code and debugging things, making that much easier. And that just means save dollars when you don't have to spend so much time. But the other thing is, of course, that you can actually make apps that are much faster, that can do things that you couldn't do before because suddenly you don't have a bottleneck in handling data. And also the more important one that we've come into, which was also the case for this guy, is offline availability. I think you've seen a couple of slides also in the previous presentation. Offline is quite hot. Not many apps do that very well today, actually. So one of the design goals, or some of them, was we wanted it to be very simple to learn, simple to maintain, and easy to use across threads in particular. And surely it should be very fast, and then it should be modern, not built on old technology that basically limits what you can do and cannot do. So no limitations, no SQL. So the simplicity. Here's a few Android developers, so for them I'll be showing examples in Java today. But the interface is exactly the same in Objective-C, Swift, or Java. So basically you just, the only thing you do is to extend realm object, and that's it. That's your standard object, the standard getters and setters you have to add there, and that's it. That's how we make your models. Now, if you want to do any kind of writes, what we do is that we encapsulate any kind of updates to your objects in a transaction. And that's how it's very easy to reason about what happens between the threads. So anything within the transaction is committed as one atomic operation. And so you begin your transaction, you create an object, use your normal getters and setters in your object and commit it, and that's it. Now it's persisted to disk. You can also run in memory if you want to, but it is persisted if you choose to do so. The queries are quite simple. In Android, we use this kind of annotation, floating methods where user class between 13 and 20. Whereas in iOS, we do something different. We use NS predicates there, and that is some of the difference we see where we try to tailor the library to the platform, to what people are most used to doing. And this is debatable whether we will want to also have a string-based syntax there, but this is how it is today. I think actually also in Swift we might even move over to this because it's quite convenient to have a little more type safety. You can take one query, continue, do another filtering on that query, and put on some other conditions if you want to. And these result sets, they are very, very cheap. So they don't bring in all the memory, all the results into memory. They just have references to the few objects that matches. And once you start to use your object, then the data is brought into to memory. You can also do relations, simple relations like you would in your normal code. You could add a dog. You could even have a list of dogs if you want to have a one-to-many relation. And the rest is the same. You will begin a transaction. You can think the only difference is the second last line here. You basically get the dogs and then add a dog if you want to. It's quite simple. So the only thing to do if you want to do this across threads is basically to ensure that you get an instance of round in each thread. That's the only thing, the rest is the same. So that is basically your handle per thread. And then you don't have to think more about different threads. That's it. The good thing is that these write, they cannot conflict. A write will block for any other writers. Only one write will happen at a time, but you can have hundreds of readers at a time, hundreds of threads reading the same data. They will all read it consistently. As soon as the writes are complete, they'll get updated. All the objects that you have in your read transaction will get updated. Now, it's also fast, I said. And one big disclaimer here, I think everyone who's ever tried to make any kind of benchmarks knows that it's really difficult to do properly, especially on Android and Java. So take it as a rough indicator, do your own tests. This is writes. We insert 1,000 records in a single transaction just to add some stuff. And these are SQLite, ORMLite, Green DAO. There are some others we didn't show for that, but and round. But the funny thing is that we didn't actually optimize round for inserts. That is not our priority actually. It was more queries. I think that's something you do a little more than writes normally. And yeah, that's just a big difference. once you start to work with a lot of data, and even if you work with little data. So that's not something you need to worry about. It actually means that what is typically not encouraged, like doing queries on your UI thread, is actually possible in most cases. As long as you're working with just thousands of records and not hundreds of thousands of records, you can easily do that and it will work. You don't have to consider multiple threads. But test it yourself, see if it works for you. Some of the lessons learned while building RHEL. So the first thing is that, I mean, that goes for probably everyone. You have to aim high. I mean, there's no reason not to. You've got to have try and build the world's best product. Otherwise, it won't be. I'm not saying that we're there yet, but that's our ambition. Also, when you do that, it's very good to have some solid funding. And if you try to aim high, actually, the good investors, they will also come because they want to see a vision. So we have some very good solid funding from the US. We actually started in Denmark, a few guys, and went through Y Combinator and started an office in Silicon Valley to get investors. And then you need a 100% dedicated team, that are funded for years. So even though we've been building this for the last 3 years, we still have a number of years ahead of us without earning money. So we have a dedicated team that can actually work on this. It's not a one-man open source project, although those are very good. But it does require some time to actually provide good service. Because that's what's needed. I think we really need to listen to community, to users, when you try to build something that you want people to use. It's quite obvious, and especially for libraries. Not so many to choose from, but asking people, actively going out and talking to them, to customers, that really helps, gives you some feedback on what you need to do. And then also react quickly when people come with something. Try to be very fast in fixing things. It does take time to do this, but it's also very rewarding. We get a lot of emails about people being quite surprised about how quickly we react and how positively we take even weird requests. But I think it's very rewarding to do that. I mean, we are our own customers, we're developers ourselves, so we know how it is. One thing, though, that we found out was that performance is really great. Now, we've been building this awesome high-performance C++ core database engine, and it could completely kill everything. Now, then we looked at usability, having this object-oriented interface on top that actually eats quite a lot of performance. And that's why these ORMs are very slow compared to SQLite, for instance, in some cases. But there's nothing you can do with regards to that once you build on top of something you cannot change. This is an example of how long it takes to actually add an object the first time you try to add an object to the database. Initially it took 4 seconds. Yeah, 4 seconds. And that has to do with Java reflection. When you try to look at an object and see what kind of properties it has and all that, that is amazingly slow. And working through that, doing all sort of weird things, and then in particular caching all these lookups helps quite a lot, so you can get down to something reasonable. So basically you have the option of watching all this or influencing it. So I would of course encourage you to try this out. I mean, we're in the business of building the goddamn best data persistence layer in the world, and I hope you'll try it out and give us some feedback and help us build that. So that's it for me. Thank you very much for listening and staying with us.
Thank you, Brian. Very interesting stuff. So, do you guys have any questions?
First of all, I want to thank you for the huge amounts of work you've been doing on the project. Of course, as mobile developer, we're really excited about the speed and about the flexibility, but the first question that comes into our minds is that maybe it's lacking of my knowledge about the framework, but is it flexible enough to build a pattern about the realm? For example, if we need active record looking something, can we do this on realm, or it is designed to be used as is?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So obviously, we wanted to actually wait until we had all features, until we had it all integrated with all kind of libraries and cool stuff. But then we had to wait a little longer before launching it. So, I mean, what we're trying to do now is to make what we have, actually we tried to give it out to people so we could get some feedback on where is it that it should integrate very well with other stuff you're doing. So I cannot really say whether one or the other is possible or not possible, but it's in our interest. We are very interested in making sure that that this persistent solution is more than just a flat database. It's something that hooks well into other frameworks so that it's easy to work with data. That's our ambition.
So other priorities coming first?
Yeah, all priorities are just coming first to make it, but we very much listen to what people are asking us, so that's what we do.
And the second question is about deadlines.
Yeah.
Like we as developers, we can't really put in production better frameworks, and as I read just on the internet, it's still beta.
Yeah.
For how long it's going to being better? When is it going to be live?
Yeah, so I think Google Email was beta for quite a long time. And still been quite useful. The core database has actually been used in production by Zynga, the game company, for the last 2 years, with millions of users. We already have thousands of users putting their production in or putting their apps in production. So I think the features that are there are quite solid. So if your app works, it works. I mean, but so the beta label is because we want feedback, right? So we want to keep the beta label there as long as the API is not completely solid, right? We want to keep the option open to change the API based on the feedback.
All right, makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Еще вопросы?
Я видела, вот там была самая первая рука, которую поменяли. Слева. Там была самая первая рука.
Зона Динамо теперь там.
Thank you. What about full text search? How can I use that? Should I create some indexes or something like that?
Yeah, so for the moment we don't have any built-in full text search. I think the only thing we have in text searching is begins with, ends with, contains. That's sort of the only text searches you can do today. So if you can live with contains, that'll be it. But again, we are working on adding much more query capabilities and full text searching and stuff like that going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Давайте последний вопрос. Там ребята поднимали. Если они еще хотят.
У меня очень короткий вопрос.
Thank you.
Anything about C# support?
Yeah, it's hard to be here promising anything, but C# is definitely on our radar. We also have some prototypes working on it. Right now we're focusing more on just making sure that the Android and the iOS version is completely solid. This is also a matter of resources, but we're totally also in love with some of the bigger frameworks that use C# to build cross-platform tools. So that's something we definitely want to work with. I cannot give you a deadline, sorry. I don't want to promise too much.
All right, that's it. Thank you, Brian, and good luck with your project.
And if you have any questions, I'll be around.